Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host of the Leads Without podcast. Today, I have another powerful guest for a powerful conversation. My good friend Christine. We connected about a few weeks ago and had a great chat last week. We learned that we have quite a few things in common. One of them being that we both have, traveled a lot and lived in a few places. And in a nutshell, what Christine does, first and foremost, let me backtrack. She's based currently in Wisconsin and lived in many places, Norway. She spent a year as a child in Germany. And so she has this exposure to international world. And then something really fascinating, we're just talking to her that we can do an entire episode just on that. She studied Russian and traveled to the USSR, for those of you who remember it, back in the day. So that could be a wonderful, fascinating, captivating topic, not just for a podcast, but an entire book. You could even launch, if you wanted to, just an entire podcast and you want, and just sharing what was life in the Soviet times, and invite other people who have had the same experience. That could be, I can see that becoming a very powerful podcast. But anyways, this is for another talk. We'll do that maybe in the next few weeks. But so in a nutshell, what she does, she's helping at the highest level, awakening people to the higher self. And to achieve that, she does that through different means, such as, for example, she's a coach. She trains people. She teaches energy work and helping people with stress and productivity, and helping them learn, especially, and unleash and awaken their psychic skills, because we all have those psychic skills laying dormant in us. We just need to remember that we have them, and just like anything, that any muscle that needs practice and training, and this is what she does. So this is in a nutshell, Christine, and we have a lot of material to talk. And my little pinky is telling me that this will be more than just a one episode. It's going to be a few episodes. So anyways, without any further ado, Christine, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi, Payman. It's great to be here. I'm so excited to have this great conversation with all the juiciness.
Absolutely. This is all about having a beautiful conversation. Anyways, first and foremost, the type of conversation I like to have on my podcast, or to have a look under the hood, so to speak, to see what's in your heart, to have a heart-to-heart conversation, hence the name Leaders with a Heart. So we're going to be talking about your impact, your business, and all you're doing now in your life a little bit further. But first and foremost, what I like to get to know with all of my guests, and that is, who's, for example, Christine as a person, as a human being, first and foremost. So ready for that?
Oh, wow. Yes, the word eclectic comes up for me right away. It's
all right. Before we start, so tell us, for people who don't know you, who's Christine as a human being and as a person?
Who is?
Yes.
Yeah. Eclectic. I'm someone who's this crazy combination of being very intense and really serious, and loving to take deep dives into exploring consciousness and alternate states of consciousness too. And a great sense of humor about it all, because, honestly, if you take everything so seriously,
yes.
Yeah, you're missing a lot of what's going on, and the magic of the moment. And so I usually live a life, no matter where I'm living, where I'm really connected to nature, and family and animals. I have quite a few pets.
Yes.
And so that creates this sort of domestic anarchy, as I said. It's like the days aren't quite predictable, and that's kind of a fun mix, but sometimes it's a little challenging keeping your focus on projects,
Awesome. Yeah. Now, to start off, I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know you as a person. Ready?
Okay.
All right. What makes you happy?
I think being able to laugh and being creative too. Those two things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What makes you smile?
Yeah, I guess the same two things, or beauty, nature. Yeah. Seeing someone else really waking up and being happy too. That's so amazing.
Beautiful. Now let's take the happiness factor a couple of notches higher. What makes your soul come alive? What sets your heart and fire in a good way, in a positive way?
That again would be seeing other people wake up from a state where they're kind of like on autopilot to really waking up to the beauty of who they are and what they actually want to do when they're here. More than, just what they're doing at the moment.
I read a quote, speaking of that, about 2 years ago that I will never forget. And that quote was, the two most important dates or moment in our lives are one, when you're born, and two, when you realize why you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, tell us, what makes you sad and angry?
When you see people who are just really stuck in duality thinking, and they're creating conflicts where they really don't need to be ones. I think that's a challenge for us light workers. And as you go on, you get more distance from it, so you can get more of that detachment of watching and going, oh, that's interesting. It's just programming, and just going to take a step back.
Especially in the past few years with what's going on in the world, it's even more emphasized.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really a fascinating period because it's challenged us all to say, what do we value?
Oh, yes.
Do we actually value what we say we want, peace and harmony? Do we really value that? And it's an individual choice all day long, really.
Just like the saying says, talk is cheap. You got to walk the walk,
Yeah, and not be selective.
No, exactly. Now, tell us. I know we're totally on the same page. That's why, we have a good conversation, all that. So tell us now, what scares you?
Oh, not being able to do my whole life's mission before I go.
Oh, yes.
Being behind.
What would you say is your life's mission in a nutshell?
Well, it is this communicating, being able to be part of the dialogue and helping people, assisting in the ship. And that's the funny thing, because even though that's the fear, and I think a lot of us light workers feel this anxiety, we got to hurry up. And actually it's really to just let go and just be along for the ride and see where it takes you. And it's all good.
Absolutely.
So like most of the fears, it's really kind of irrelevant.
Oh, yes. Most of the fears, the greatest fears is what we imagine, I saw a picture. I'll send it to you after. It's absolutely beautiful. It says, 99% or whatever, the greatest thing that is holding us back is what we imagine in our head. That's the greatest baggage that we all carry, is what we have in our head. Just get rid of that and everything becomes so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, I see it with the clients all the time, and myself too. It's like you can go and you can find a million excuses for why you're not doing what your heart desires.
Absolutely.
And, it's really about, well, maybe you can't do 100% of it. Can you do 30? Step out and do it.
Even, there is one, I'm sure you heard of the Japanese principle of Kaizen, 1% better today than yesterday, just 1%.
Yeah. Once you start doing it, you find out you can do more.
Within a year, that's 365%. You're a completely different person, different path, different trajectory, and all that
stuff for making it happen. But you have to step up and not wait for the perfect circumstances.
The perfect circumstances, the moment you start.
Exactly.
We don't need permission or blessings from anyone. We just make it happen. Do it. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but the magic is, it's not that hard. The hardest thing in anything, and it might seem cliche and cheesy, but the hardest part is the first step. Once you do that, it's, one thing I learned through my spiritual awakening the past 2 years is that once you set your intentions to the universe, especially when it comes to doing good, the universe is going to take care of it. And I love consuming podcasts, and one day I was listening to a podcast, and this guy said that your job is not, your only job is to figure out the why. The how, that's none of your business. That is the universe's job. Everything is going to show up in your life, manifest in your life in ways that you know they don't make any sense. Certain things are not meant to be understood. You just need to accept it, embrace it, and go with it.
Yeah, I think especially, in the West, we're led to think that we need to control everything,
Oh
have it
yes.
manage and control and plan. And that's great. But sometimes, I mean, from all the projects you've been involved in, you don't know all the things, even with the best planning,
Yeah.
things show up and you just have to go with the flow.
One of the greatest minds of all time, Socrates, said, "Hey, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know anything." And that's coming from Socrates. So if he
That's
says
so
that,
true.
then what are we? There's no way. Just surrender to the universe, put your intentions out there, and just surrender. It's gonna be
Yeah,
good.
it's so true. That reminds me of when I finished my master's at University in Oslo, and the first thought that really entered into my mind was, oh my gosh, now I don't have to pretend I know everything because I don't care.
That is
I
powerful.
know a lot about this niche area and I have become very skilled. And I
Mhm.
can admit I know nothing on many topics. And I'm so grateful for other people who do.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I love
Okay.
this conversation with you. So we're gonna, expand on that in a moment. Last question I want to ask you in that first series of rapid fire question is, what would you say is your number one personal superpower?
Tenacity.
Oh yes, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Tenacity to try things, to get going when it's less than perfect, to find the opportunities, to get up when it doesn't turn out the way I thought, and tenacity to find the way back into the heart
Oh yes.
and hope for new openings. Yeah,
Mhm. Now let's talk about something fun that we both love, and that is traveling. You like traveling, right?
I do. I
All
do.
right. Now let me take you down a different type of traveling, down memory line. Go back to when you're a young girl growing up. When we're kids, people around us, parents, teachers, family, relatives, friends, always ask us, "So, Christine, what do you want to become when you grow up?" What was your answer as a young girl to that question?
I was a writer.
Ah.
I just didn't realize I also wanted to speak and teach
Mm,
when I was really young. Yeah, because I was a little bit shy when I was pretty young.
mm, yeah, I see. You know, what was your relationship with school growing up? Did you love it or hate it?
I did love it. I was, a mix. I mean, there was the side of me who wanted to make the grown-ups happy, whether it was the teacher or my parents. Yeah, that was there. And I found out that was a relatively easy way to make them happy. That was a little more predictable.
Yeah.
Um, but there was a side of me that was just endlessly, endlessly curious and
Mm,
loved learning. So
yeah.
by the time I was in high school, I would be the really, really, really crazy kid in the class who would read the stuff that was on the syllabus, and then I would go looking for the secondary literature, even though I didn't quite realize that that was a thing then. I just kept being curious. Yeah.
Wow. Curiosity is a powerful, it's almost a vital, needed quality to have, as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned.
And it's funny because that was a way of traveling.
Yeah, indeed. For me
I
too.
traveled all over the place by reading, everything from Greek and Roman literature when I was young to some German literature and in translation, all of this obviously. And in English literature. And it just felt like, you were traveling.
It
Yeah.
is the easiest way to travel. Nowadays, we also have YouTube, but before
Mhm.
YouTube, just grab a good old book, you
Grab
know?
a book. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, a couple of more questions about that growing up part of your life. What was your favorite subject at school?
Wow. You know, I did have so many. When I was really young, I did love reading, but I kind of didn't look at it as a subject. So I liked
Mhm,
history and I loved psychology.
mhm.
And I really did enjoy anatomy and biology, but yeah, so
Was
just
there?
curious. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there any subject that you really didn't like at all?
Algebra. I liked the conceptual math. So like
Mhm.
geometry just seemed fun and trig, but algebra, I was like, what's the point?
Yeah. How am I going to use it in my life? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I know other people have found it super useful and I'm really grateful for them, but I,
Yeah,
you know, I,
exactly.
I just couldn't keep that focus on it very well.
For sure. So imagine if we were in say in grade 10, grade 11 together in the same class. What kind of person, what kind of kid were you back then? Were you more like the life of the class, the party, the chatterbox, the geeky one, or the quiet one?
You know, I really was a very peculiar combination because, like I said, I read a lot, read and studied a lot, but I was also involved in drama, track and field, and cheerleading and performance dance for all my 4 years of high school. And like track and field, I was really super involved. So it's kind
Wow.
of, I think people, you know, I was a maverick. It was like unusual. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What was your very first job?
Well, I had jobs from since I was actually 10, miscellaneous. So, but I guess one of the big ones when I was 15, I started as a nurse's aide in a nursing home.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of
Wow.
funny. My mom just suggested it. And I thought, oh, okay. And it was a job that I ended up going back to many times
Hmm.
during my college years too, because people were so grateful.
Yes.
You really got to see the rawness of life. I mean, by the time I was 16, I was watching people die and I was putting them in body bags. And that was really strong. And it was actually really beautiful. And just being able to show kindness and make them laugh a little in their last moments.
Help them
Um,
transition. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Were
it
you
was actually pretty strong.
back then when you were doing that job? Were you already aware of your spiritual side, or that's something that came after?
I think I really wasn't. So then I was thinking I was going to be pre-med, and I was just really fascinated with medicine and that aspect of helping people. And a little side of me wanted to do psychology. So the other side started waking up in college very
Mm.
early on, like 19 years old. And when I feel like I kind of had what do you say? I felt like I had a midlife crisis when I was 19. It was really weird. I was just like, why
A
am I
teenage life
here?
crisis. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, just an
Uh,
existential crisis of why am I here? Who am I? What am I doing? And I don't want to just run the hamster wheel. It needs to have meaning or I'm not going to work my butt off.
was that something that triggered that, or was that something crescendo, or?
I think it was from really by that time, by the time I was 20, I'd been used to really, really driving it hard. And I was during college too, I was used to working about 20 hours a week and having 18 credits. And some of them were like
Sure.
6 credits of lab courses. And so
Hmm.
really very time intensive.
Sure.
And and I just and there I also felt like there was one day I asked myself, what is it that I'm really good at?
That's a great question.
And it's like my 19-year-old brain's like, you know, totally letting go of what adults have said I'm good at and grades. And I felt that the thing that popped up was actually listening to my intuition.
Oh, that is key.
I felt I was like, wow, that's the brilliant side of me where I can tune into deep insight. Everything else is kind of peripheral.
Sure.
That was a huge aha.
Absolutely. And the sooner we learn that, the better, is because the intuition, the gut feeling we have, that's a message from our soul. And the
Mm-hmm.
soul has two main purposes: one, to protect you and keep you alive, and two, to guide you. And we,
Yeah.
as we led to believe and brainwashed in some way to always, not listen to that, push it away, but instead seek guidance from other people, from authority, and that's, while we all already have all the answers to pretty much all the questions we have within us.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. So it's like about a year later, it's that the expression, when the student is ready, the master appears.
Absolutely.
And I began after that understanding to meet a sequence of different teachers who took me deeper into different topics. And, they were more philosophy, psychology related. And then very deeply, then I met a person who was really into Carl Jung, and we would talk for hours and hours. And this was like outside of my studies. I would just read different collected works of his. And that took me into Buddhism at that age, at 20. And then I did a real deep dive into Zen and Tibetan Buddhism. And that pretty much changed my life. Yeah. I hadn't learned to meditate effectively. So I was fumbling there. But it was really opening up the portal.
Wow. Well, all that thought, because there's one question I want to ask you before we even go there, and that is, there's a saying that says, change your story, change your life. And by story, I mean what we tell ourselves in our head all day long. So when you, Christine, you were at your lowest, for example, and what did you do to change your story, to change your life? Did you do it through the help of friends, family, mentors, books? Tell us the process you used to change your story, to change your life.
Oh, that's a really strong question. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I can say different points in my life. It's just radically looking at what didn't even just feel good on a general level, and walking away from a lot of things. So like my junior year in college, I was in a sorority, and it wasn't that everything was wrong, but I just felt I wanted more freedom, and I wanted more time to myself to pursue other things. And I just said goodbye to everyone and left.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, because I actually was walking away to not really having much of any friends outside of that circle. And it's just kind of walking into letting the universe say, I think there's something for me. I'm going to jump out there and you support me. And yeah, that the next few years were really transformative. And there too, I felt like, I felt the urge after the Russia trip to study abroad. And there too, I had met some exchange students from Norway, and I got really curious. And so you'll love this, being an entrepreneur and thinking out of the box. I contacted the university in Oslo and said, I'd love to study there for a while. And they said, well, we got a summer program for 2 weeks or something. And I'm like,
ask and you shall receive, right?
Oh no, I said, I don't want a summer program.
Oh, okay.
I want a whole year. And they're like, no, we don't have that. I'm like, I want to do that.
Make it happen. Let's make it happen. Let's create
it. I kept on corresponding with them for about 3 months. And they finally said, I finally called, and they were like, we don't do that. And I'm like, can't you? Can't you? Why can't you? And they finally said, okay, come. So it's the kind of thing when you're young and crazy, you're like, you don't even understand all the complications.
Yeah.
You just pack your things and you find a one-way ticket and go.
These are the best decisions. Yeah.
It was really interesting because, I felt this calling, and you don't even, spirit calls you and you don't even know why. Yes. And that's the fun thing, is logical brain goes, oh, I want to do this and this and this. And my logical brain says, I want to develop a really great, language competency from my master's later, and my PhD, blah, blah. And then I got there, and within 2 months, I met my husband.
Wow.
So it was really funny. And that opened a completely different world for me. And there I have to say, the fault lies with him that I ended up partially taken the trajectory because he knew a number of psychics. And so it kind of normalized it for me.
So was he already on a spiritual path and he just invited you to join him?
In a way, he was really
Okay.
into Castaneda and, gosh, what are some of the Enrollment? So it was a little bit more, that shamanic Indian, Native American. And so, but he was just generally open and he was interested in sacred sites. But it was funny. And it was just that acknowledging that it was okay and that it was real. And then boom, after that, things started happening. I started seeing ghosts. I started noticing energy. And so it's like the Pandora's box just ripped open and I wasn't looking for it, but it just, the time was scheduled for it to happen. Yeah.
That's key. Everything happens at the right time when you're ready. And everything you do prepares you for the next stage. Just like you mentioned, you met several influential teachers that each led you to the next phase and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And how even when your logical brain starts getting in the way, spirit comes in and goes, hey, I got something for you here.
Not yet. This is the way,
Yeah, here, you got to know.
Yeah, wow. You mentioned Norway. Tell us about Norway. That's fascinating. So when you arrived there, what did you know about Norway? You just went blind, and you just went in full adventure mode.
A little of both, it's kind of funny because I had studied Norwegian at the university in the States before. And I got over there and I discovered that wasn't very useful.
Happened to me too, yes.
It's like I can say things like my book is blue, oh, great. And my name is,
The flowers are pretty, whatever.
Yeah. But functional, conversational, it was like, forget it, And so, yeah, no. But so that was having to, really get up to speed fast. But I had read a lot of literature, but that, the literature and translation is primarily from the turn of the previous century. So it's like the Victorian era, Ibsen and a lot of those others at that time. So it gave me a little bit more of a historical aspect, but it did not prepare me for modern Norway.
Sure.
Yeah. But it, and it's changed a lot over the years. I lived there long enough to see it really transform, but one of the things I enjoyed the most there was really in tune with the history and enjoying that. And the history in some ways, even though especially the Viking period, it's not so much people talk about it, but it is still alive there, as in there are sacred sites where like the excavations from the Viking ships were, and there's different stone configurations, that look like Stonehenge, similar sort of thing. And so, like when we moved back, we deliberately moved to a place that had them like we had a Viking site in our backyard, and that was really interesting. Wow. Yeah.
So living in Norway, how long did you spend there?
20 years.
Oh, wow. 20 years. Yeah. So you became almost, by now, I'm sure you completely immersed yourself in the culture, speaking the language fluently and building a social network around you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like 16 years. And then my husband and I moved to the US with our son. And we lived in the US for 6 years. And then we moved back for 4 years.
Okay.
And then we came back here again. So now we're back in the US. But yeah.
What would you say has been the main difference between living in the US versus in Norway?
I guess what you could say, it's like this is a bigger pond to swim in.
In the US, you mean?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. It's bigger market and all that.
It's funny. Yeah. Like Norway is kind of like the whole population is about the population of the state I'm living in now.
Wow.
And things are very centralized there. So, there are fun sides of it in that way because because we lived part of the time in Oslo area, we knew quite a few people, and it's very central. And it was like, somebody who knows somebody.
Of course, yeah.
And my husband was a professional artist, so he knew a lot of people in that milieu. And that was really fun. Yeah.
Was there anything from the Norwegian lifestyle or way of behaving that took you by surprise if we're not expecting, whether in a positive or negative way?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, it was very different. It's a more introverted culture, you know. And in some ways, I found that really relaxing. Yeah. There isn't quite the tempo of go-go as in the US.
Sure.
And so I found that relaxing in many ways to go deeply. So in ways, it's like it holds the energy for the artist archetype. And there are a lot of artists there. So it's kind of, but it's funny because there is a contrast with social democracy, that there's a lot of social conformity. And people do speak about that a lot. It's something called janteloven, which is who are you to think you are somebody? That's what it literally is. So even though there's this kind of artist tendency, you have this, you should be in the box. You should be a certain way. And that runs really deep and consensus. So like in the government or business, they have a hard time making decisions because everybody has to agree. And, I mean, no one agrees on everything unless you're all pounded into the box and you're not, which leaves kind of I would guess, I mean, I didn't work in business there really. So I would think it would bring out a little bit less creative problem solving, but I'm guessing. But I loved like that during dinner parties. Initially, I loved that versus in the US, you could sit for 5 hours and really get into conversations.
Oh yeah, same thing in the south of Europe. I grew up in the south of France, and when you go to someone's house, you barely leave the dinner table. You just get there, sit there, and you eat your food slowly. It's not like rush, and 10 minutes you have to be done with eating.
Yeah.
Like we do here in North America, for example. So
yeah, we're like, let's go and get something done.
Yeah, exactly.
Or be entertained watching something,
Yeah. How difficult was it for you when you moved back after 20 years in Norway to readjust to life in the US? Did you have like a reverse culture shock?
That I think we were talking about that before, and absolutely, even when I would just come back to visit, either way, it's, and as an energy worker, I feel it on an energy way. It's not just culture shock. It's almost like you're walking in a dream for a few days, even though I know both cultures and I know all the cultural codes. I know the kind of the body language and everything and the expressions and the languages. It feels like it's walking in a dream for a while, and it feels like it's not real, the surreal feeling. And you just have to kind of walk it off after a few days or a few weeks. And I think it's as the frequency is adjusting, you become used to a certain frequency. And I noticed that too when I was in Bali doing yoga teacher training for 6 weeks.
Wow.
I felt like I was on a different planet. It was like,
yes, indeed.
It's so different. And by the time I was finished my course, I just called my husband and my son and I said, you guys just need to come over here because there's no way I can explain this to you.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
need to see it, live it, and feel it. And I think, that is some of the magic of traveling, is just feeling how the world can be different and there's different versions of beautiful.
Absolutely.
And people are both the same and different, and it's wonderful to experience that.
Thank you. Yeah. I noticed the same thing after living in 10 countries, 4 continents. Doesn't matter whether you're white, black, blue, green, whatever. We all have the same basic needs. We all want to be respected, loved, cared for, and have opportunities to grow and all that. And you don't even need to speak the person's language. You can feel it. Body language is universal. The vibe. For example, in China.
Yeah, exactly.
In China, even though I'm good with languages, I didn't speak Chinese. And of course, most Chinese don't speak English. But we're able to communicate just by vibration, body language, facial expressions, hand gestures. So certain things that are just universal. Well, and you realize that, hey, honestly, you don't even need language in some ways to communicate because it's
No,
done.
it's the goodwill and the vibe that,
Yeah,
people connect from the heart to the heart, and
exactly.
they see where you need help, or they see where you're just
What you want.
honoring the magic of each other.
Yeah. So you mentioned you spent 20 years in Norway and a few numbers of years also in the US.
Mhm.
Where and among these two do you subconsciously feel that you're at home the most? Your energy feels at home. For example, for me, the place I felt the most at home has been Brazil. And I realized after I had actually just before you, I had that same lady, that hypnotherapist, did a past life reading on me last December live on the podcast. And I told her, listen, why is it that I feel the most alive when I'm in Brazil? I said, well, you've had quite a few very successful and happy, fulfilling lives in Brazil. So for you, where do you feel did you feel the most alive, the most at ease between these two?
Oh, that's really interesting.
That like coming
Yeah,
home, the moment you
I,
step off the plane, for example.
it's not just Norway and the US. I mean, one time when I was flying to Greece,
Oh yeah.
I was flying to Greece, and I'm still, way high up in the air. I started to smell this floral smell, and I was like, "What is this?" I'm like, I don't think I've noticed that before. And and I look around me, and I'm up in the air, and I could notice it wasn't a perfume. And so I thought, And then I got down on the ground, and it was the oleander,
Oh yes.
and it's everywhere there.
Oh yes.
And so many places in Greece too. I felt like I was coming home, and I was like,
Wow.
especially at Delphi. I'd lived there. And when I
Oh
was
yeah.
at Delphi, I saw some of the past lives, and I saw the past life where I chose to go to Crete.
Mm.
Um, I met my husband, and he came to Delphi, and he lived in Crete. And so I went to Crete with him.
Wow. Powerful.
Yeah. And so it's amazing. It's like you can feel home so many places. And I felt that really strongly too in Glastonbury for the same reason. I had
Mhm.
lived there, but I don't belong either of those places right now.
You're a free spirit. Where, like, as we say in
Yeah.
modern language, you're a free agent. You know.
Yeah. And I think, with our awareness of past lives, we feel at home because we had a beautiful life there, and this world is full of many corners of it we visited and lived and thrived and grieved,
Mhm.
and yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we can talk for hours, but let's move on. There's one topic that I told you we can do an entire, not just episode, but entire podcast, and that is talking about your experience living in the Soviet Union. So tell us about that. What initially took you there?
Well, I didn't live there. I was only there for 2 weeks, so I'm just
Oh,
make
okay,
that
okay,
real clear.
okay.
I didn't live there. No.
Okay, 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 yeah.
Yeah. um that's actually really funny, because like a lot of these synchronistic things that show up in your life,
Mhm.
I had just randomly heard about it my last year in college, like a month before it happened. And I can't even remember how I heard about it. And I just went, oh, I want to go, because
Wow.
I've been studying Russian. And it's funny because most of the people in the group had been planning on going for a year. And I'm just like, hey, I'm going to go. um, but yeah, what was the question again? What
So what
was,
what 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 took you there? So you mentioned
what
that
took
you
me
were
there?
studying
Oh,
it,
yeah.
and yeah.
I was really intrigued. Amongst other things, why I had studied Russian was I had been really a fan of Dostoevsky,
Oh yeah,
and and
classic.
and especially the brothers Karamazov, which really is kind of like a study in different personalities,
Uh-huh.
and just this contrast between the really stern and the incredibly passionate and the very intellectual and characters in that story. And I was really intrigued by that. And then reading Anton Chekhov too, the plays.
Uh-huh.
And so I wanted to just experience a culture that was really different, from the American culture. And and see if it vaguely resembled the novels, And yeah, it was really interesting going there and seeing a little bit of that spectrum. And I think it was at that time period damped down by the Soviet period and with communism and that fear and repression. So yeah, you did have that, that feeling. And it was the Glasnost period during Gorbachev that we went.
Yeah.
So,
the easing part, the opening up. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, which translated into this big confusion and no one knew exactly what that meant.
Transparency was one meaning that has been given for it.
Yeah, and it kind of ended up being like, what does that mean we can actually do? And I mean, here's a random crazy story, but one of the people in our group, we were authorized to go up to the submarine-based city, Murmansk. Yeah, and no Americans had ever been there. And so, I mean, we had walked down by the docks and saw the nuclear submarines and everything, and we were taken to parties with the Young Communist League and stuff, and and out and about. And it's really funny if you've ever been up in the Arctic Circle. So little grows there; it feels like you're on the moon. These trees they're tiny and they look half dead, and the vegetation is struggling. And it's kind of chilly even in May.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, one part was this beautiful of people being just so dumbfounded to see foreigners there, that the natives, they were like, oh my goodness. And how excited they were when they found out I spoke it was probably like first grade, Russian. They were like, oh my goodness. So it was hilarious. But one of the people in my group, because you have white nights there, so it doesn't get dark in the
in the summer, yes.
Not at all that far north. And so one of the crazy students in my group, he thought he'd go down, take pictures of the submarines.
Well, genius.
Genius.
Best way to get kicked out.
I found out about that the day after, and we're like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, I'm a little tired. And we're like, oh. And he goes, well, I took photos and the KGB grabbed me.
Wow.
So he spent the whole night in a cell or playing chess with the soldiers. And he goes, and they were cheating terribly, but, I let them, whatever. and as we were talking about it, there was this whole confusion because they were trying to decide what to do with them.
Oh, they knew. They caught him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
They took all his film and everything.
Oh, okay.
And then they were just trying to decide, do we put him in jail for good, or what?
We make him disappear, or, nobody knows would know in an Arctic. Oh, accident,
Yeah, or is this going to be a diplomatic incident? And they decided, we're just going to take his camera and let him go.
And as if nothing happened, yeah.
Yeah, so even the group leader, our professor who was leading the trip, he didn't know. He never knew.
Wow.
So he only just told a handful of us, and we're like, oh boy, don't do that again.
That's crazy, yes.
So it was this period where no one knew. And I mean, because I'm a little adventurous and I knew language, a girlfriend of mine and I, we would go off the beaten path during the day, like in Moscow. We took the subway and we just went all over the place.
Yeah.
And so because we thought we want to see a little bit more than what the trip will take us on. And it was interesting.
Were you allowed to roam on your own, or were you supposed to only go wherever the guide would take you? Like, for example, as is the case now in North Korea right now.
I think technically we shouldn't have, but no one was stopping us. So we just did.
Mm-hmm. One question that comes to mind. So to put the picture, the setting here. So you're talking at a time where, we have this, still the Cold War mindset, but still starting to ease out. So you as an American student, you want to go to of all places, the Soviet Union. What was the reaction of your family, your parents, your teachers, maybe not the teacher, but friends, when you told them, hey, I'm going to the Soviet Union? Did you think that you're crazy? You lost your mind? So what kind of reaction did you get from the people, especially your parents, when you told them that?
Well, I think, my friends, they knew me. So they were like, oh, yeah, she's just off on some other crazy adventure. It's just a little bit upscale.
Yeah.
But my parents, I knew they would freak out. So, so I wrote them, this is hilarious. So I wrote them this letter and I said, I'm going on a study trip, and I listed off literally every conflict zone in the Middle East I could think of that was in the news right then. And then I said, no, just kidding. I'm only going to the Soviet Union.
All right. Wow. Filming. Okay.
So they weren't real thrilled about it, but they knew. I mean, I was leaving in about 2 weeks then.
Was it easy for you to convince them, or?
Oh, I didn't convince them. I just left.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I said, I'll see you later and I'll show you pictures.
Yeah. Wow. I'll be okay. I'll come back home. Don't worry. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And so take us to when you're just flying over, just about to land in Russia, or on the way there. What's going on in your mind? Are you basically what I'm saying is, I'm sure you had some pictures in your mind of what to expect, but how different was reality to what you were imagining once you landed in Moscow and started to interact with the people there?
Yeah, I guess I was just when I travel, I'm just really an open book. Let's see what's there.
Mm-hmm.
Open mindset. I'm just going to observe for a while and see what it is. Yeah. So I realized that I wasn't getting any of my preconceived notions weren't gonna do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Was there anything that you noticed from the Russians at the time back then that really surprised you, either positively or negatively?
Well, it was a real contrast between them being excited to meet us and excited to connect, and then how shut down they were.
Yeah.
And now having a background in studying trauma too, that I work with clients, I see that it's a trauma reaction. How we deal with trauma can be either that you overreact and are angry and act out, or you shut down. And so it's like your nervous system shuts down and you go in this box to just survive. And it's like they say when the fight or flight or freeze.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the fighting. You realize the fighting is useless.
Yes.
You can't run away. The only thing you can do is freeze. So you learn to function in the freeze zone.
Yeah.
And so the emotions get shut down. The joy gets shut down. The feeling of what can I do? You don't feel like you have a lot of agency, a lot of choice. And so there was this kind of overwhelming sadness a lot of places.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And the oddest thing that it struck me, being Americans, we initially stuck out as a sore thumb, no matter where we were, for two things. We were bubbly and joyful.
Oh.
We were having fun.
And the clothing?
And yes, we wore colorful clothing.
So the Russians were wearing mostly like just either blue or black, or what was the color that?
Very gray, a lot of gray and browns and yeah, kind of cocky green and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's muted palette, a whole muted palette, and I'm wearing like red and yellow and oh man. So it was like it was almost like you feel like hiding half your suitcase because it's like this is too flamboyant.
Nobody told you about how to prepare, what to bring. Make sure you don't bring too much flashy or daring type of clothing. Just conservative and black or gray or anything. Didn't prepare you for that?
It did, and even if they had, I think as college students you don't listen.
Rebellious.
You want to have fun. So you bring your fun clothes,
Yeah. The one thing you mentioned is that you guys were very easy to stand out because of your bubbliness. That's something powerful, because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure because of the circumstance, the conditions of living, most Russians were pretty, not very happy at the time. Had nothing
No.
to look forward to. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating, but tell us about that.
Well, I don't know that I'm an expert on that, but
Mm,
um, I'm sure I know they had to do a lot of underground things, underground writing and underground meeting. And
mhm.
so there was all that. But should we leave some of this for another show, or because
Sure,
I think we could
we
go
can
on
talk.
forever.
Absolutely. That would deserve its own podcast episode just for that. Absolutely. So let's move on then. Let's move on. All right, one sec. Let me see here. All right, let's move on now. You
Because I
know,
mean, you can take that as a segue, as saying there that's shut down. You see in our
mhm,
society too in the West, we just shut
mhm.
down in different ways.
And I noticed something similar as well when I first went to China as well, because in some way the two societies are parallel in a ways.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So
I mean, today you see this shutdown with the
mhm,
incredible divisiveness, and people are nervous of getting people angry, and you're nervous
mhm,
of being ostracized, and you're wondering whether, people assume that you're going to either be black or white on an issue. It's either going to be this or that, and it's
yeah.
like it doesn't compute if you go, well, I think I'm kind of in the middle, and I understand a little of both. And I also see that the bigger picture isn't about taking sides. It's about raising our consciousness and being in our hearts, really,
Mhm,
no matter where you're living. And that's like in the book we're working on. I think that we're just in the revolutionary leaders. I think in many ways that book was about seeding the consciousness with being revolutionary, is that leading from the heart. Yes.
I got my copies 2 days ago. I was so excited.
Yeah, I have mine downstairs. I should have brought it. Yeah, up here.
It's one thing for you to write it in, but it's completely different once you actually hold it in your hand. That's
Yeah,
completely different story. That makes
yeah.
it so real. Yeah, I will read your chapter after that today, so I can wait for that. So
No, I mean, I think that so much of what we're writing about, the book, so many 20 different versions of it, is
yeah,
about leading from the heart, being yourself, being authentic, and that we're living in a time where you can learn from a teacher, absolutely learn from a teacher, be inspired, but be your own guru.
yeah.
Listen to your own intuition, develop your own intuition, follow that. You
Speaking
know?
of lessons to learn, everything I see this life as a school for us to learn lessons. So you looking back now, years after that, to that trip to the Soviet Union, what was the main thing, the number one lesson that you learned through that experience?
Oh, wow. I guess that people are the same everywhere when you
Yes,
you really connect with them.
totally.
I mean, there were
Yes.
some very beautiful experiences.
Hmm. I'm sure. Have you ever written about your trip and the things that you experienced and all that in a book or on a blog or anything before?
No, I haven't. I did slideshows originally when I came back, and that
Wow.
was kind of fun because there's so few people who'd been there. So,
Sure.
and yeah, it was
You,
really positive responses. Yeah,
you still have those slides?
I do. Yeah,
That would be
got
phenomenal to
grabs for
look
them.
at them now,
Yeah,
just wow.
yeah.
So just some food for thought. Hey, maybe you should expand that definitely into a book or anything because that's something that's phenomenal. I had
Well, and there are
no,
so many parallels with today. There really are.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So no, I think the book is so exciting because it's like really seeding the consciousness
Mhm.
for awakening to your true essence, really, and all the different ways we do that. I mean, I think, Payman, about how you are so inspiring, how you have
Thank you.
looked at opportunities wherever you've lived, and you've just gone at it full guns and just made opportunities where people didn't see anything,
Yeah,
where somebody else might not have seen that. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's go.
indeed, indeed. This is what life's about. It's about adventure, seeing the potential and not asking why, but asking why not.
Yeah, and that's what I love trying to engage clients in, is
Mhm.
finding how they can make their life into their version of an adventure.
Perfect segue. Let's talk now about because we can talk about the Soviet Union. We'll do another episode just on that.
Exactly.
So great segue now. So tell us about the impact you're having around you. What is your business, and tell us how are you making the world a better place around you, one day at a time, one client at a time.
It really is about awakening people
Mhm.
um, to their true potential, and I call it the true essence. That's from the yoga tradition, from Vedic philosophy, or you could call it from your higher self. But it's that
Mhm.
version of you that isn't mired down and cluttered down with all these expectations that your family or society has, And, it's like you and I, it's like we're willing to work pretty hard at what we do
Sure.
if our heart is in it.
Oh
But
yeah.
I'm not gonna run that hamster wheel hard for somebody else on their
Oh
agenda.
yes.
It's like, nah.
Totally.
And I think most people feel that when they're running the hamster wheel on something that the joy has been squeezed out of.
Mhm.
How can they find what else they want to do, or how can they bring more joy into what they're doing? How can they bring renewal into it? Or how can they walk away and create something entirely different? And it can also be about the relationships in their life. I work a lot with relationships too, and how to bring resilience into your how you deal with relationships and stress, and be more resourceful. And part of it is working with um, resilience, with working with change. And we've
Yeah.
had a lot of that these last 2 years.
Oh
By the
yes.
time this is all done, we should have had the opportunity to be masters of
Hopefully.
working with change and going with the flow.
Yeah, we have
And
the ultimate test of that. You know.
yeah, yeah. And, part of it is a frequency thing. I was talking with another friend the other day that is, it's about, as we're changing, as the consciousness of the planet is going up, their frequency is, increasing.
Oh yes.
And and it's literally like we're not given so much time to overthink things. We're given an opportunity and we can say yes or no. Do you want to jump in and do it? Or do you want to wait for something else because it'll be gone?
Yes.
And so it's like go for it. Um, yeah, so it's fun how we're doing that. And also, it's like beautiful seeing every life being touched. And when I'm teaching too, it is helping, well, both teaching and in sessions. I'll talk with people, but I will also hold the frequency for them that takes them into a higher consciousness
Mhm.
where suddenly they're able to see things differently.
Yes.
They're able to see things differently because they're experiencing it differently. And
Absolutely.
this is the same with teaching. It's you can talk about metaphysics, but to show someone this is what it is like to talk to your guides for the first time. This is what it's like to be connected. Here you go. And those powerful impact of that, where a lot of people cry because it's feeling connected to that,
Sure.
what had been a loss. It's that deep connection, and they know it's there. These are my angels. These are my ascended masters. These are, my galactics that I've talked to before, and I was maybe living with them before. And so that the feeling of I'm not alone here. I got a team, and I can be a part of the support team, but after session, they have their other team. And so I help people working with discernment too, and understanding and integrating all these things. Because, as your psychic skills come online, it it's a challenge to try to figure out, how do I integrate this in everyday life? Yeah, really big, and in my chapter, I'm talking about after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. You go
Mhm.
back to everyday life. and you know, after you've had a Kundalini uprising or some other really full-on transformational experience, it's like, how do I function in my everyday world with people who don't understand that side of it?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you've been into deep states of consciousness, you get that feeling of just, you know, unconditional love, and you're a part of everything. It all breaks up into waves, and you see that your body is irrelevant. It's just the spirit coming and going. And
Yeah.
how do you even explain to that with someone when they're talking about the news? And it's like, yeah, it's there, but it's
Just
not there
turn off the
too.
news, you know, a
Yeah,
waste of
yeah,
time.
yeah. And so it's you know, helping people process this, and how do they take that joy that they experience through
Mm-hmm.
these experiences and integrate it into doing things in life. Yeah, because there is a kind of a confusion, because you feel like there's such a detachment for everyday life. It's like, what am I here for now?
Yeah.
You know? So it raises all these questions of, why am I here all over again?
Why did I sign
Yeah,
up for here? I don't want to be here. You know, I keep hearing that a lot of time
yeah,
from a
yeah,
lot of people. I don't want to be
yeah,
here. I was crazy. I must have been drunk to sign up for this mission again, you know?
yeah, exactly. You know, and at this point in time, a lot of us have gone through this burnout too. Oh gosh, the exhaustion, and to that step behind that and go, okay, how do I find resilience? Really, how do I find it? You know?
Let me ask you a question. Do you want to
Yeah,
come back to this planet again? To this 3D world in a future life?
it won't be a 3D.
Mm,
It won't be. It's not a. It already isn't. It's already 4D, and that's why we're going fast.
mm-hmm,
That's why things seem like the dreams are merging with reality.
mm-hmm,
Why like you were able to make things happen fast. We're not
mm-hmm.
quite there anymore.
Yes. I heard people saying we're going to ascend to a 5D world, a new
Yeah,
Earth.
we are in the process, and that's the beautiful thing. It's you know, partially I'll go back to enlightenment as model versus
Mhm.
ascension, because ascension makes you feel like you're up and out of here and you're gone. Leave the planet, you know. But really, enlightenment, that term I like better, because it's
Yes.
tapping into the light within,
Mm-hmm.
the light within that is your soul, and bringing as much of the divine consciousness into your being in whatever you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
so that everything has a really high vibe, whether it's a podcast, a business, a course, playing with your kids, working in the garden, that you're just bringing the maximum of love and joy into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
Beautiful. What would you say is your ideal client avatar for your business?
the ideal client,
Mm-hmm.
someone who's willing to take the deep dive, who feels ready for it, and they can have a life that's cluttered, like all kinds of stuff going on, and they can have all kinds of things they're processing. They can feel burned out or depressed, and let's jump in and let's clear that off.
Do you work
Let's
mostly with men or with women or both?
both, but it probably is more women, you know, and I think that's women in this time period feel a little bit more free to do that. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen guys make some tremendous progress too, you know, with going forward. And I've had some amazing male teachers too.
So are you noticing that men are also are so what I'm asking is, are you seeing more women awakening or more men, or is it like pretty much 50-50 across the board?
You know, I don't want to be picking on women, men or anything, but it is more women.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that men don't have the potential.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we have all chosen our lifetimes for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've all been male and female.
Sure.
And you know, and partially is to get used to the vibration of each one. And I think maybe, and in modern days, a lot of women have, gone into being very masculine and being, especially, 20 years ago, there was this, I can do everything guys can do, but better, kind of feeling we had to do. And now I think we've moved into a little bit more balance of saying, I can do that, but what do I want to do? What combination of all of it do I want to do? And who am I in the middle of that? And you get to that you are given the opportunity, I feel, in our day and age to embrace the feminine, embrace the masculine within us all, and find what kind of balance feels good for me. And it's going to look different for everybody.
Yeah. So many questions, so many directions, but how are you getting your clients?
Yeah, I mean, some of them I get through a referral. Some of them just find me online. Some of them find me on Facebook. Yeah, so it kind of varies. Yeah. Find me on different podcasts or webinars.
Sure. Share with us an example of the most remarkable transformation you've seen from your client so far, one of your clients so far.
Yeah, I guess one of them is someone who started with me years ago, and then with just general coaching and energy work, and then went on through taking all the courses I had at the time and making it her own. Because when I'm teaching energy work, I really emphasize, okay, here is a framework, and I'm giving you a lot of basics, and I'm giving you a lot of tools for discernment, but I really emphasize you're going to do something unique with it. And seeing how she did that, and then did it for a while, and then actually is integrated it in completely different kind of work and business. And so, and when I met her initially, she was a little bit shy and a little bit sad, and now she is full on bubbly, joyful in everything she touches, and it's so fun. And seeing that in clients, just really, yeah.
Beautiful. Now, let's start wrapping this up. We'll definitely have to do a part 2 in the next few weeks. But to finish off, I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions on advices. Ready?
On what?
Advice.
Advice. Oh boy. Okay.
What's the best piece of advice you've received so far?
From someone else?
Yes.
Oh, the first that comes to my mind was when I was younger was, if you're feeling down, lean into it. Don't run away from it. Lean into it, and it will resolve. It's like, don't run away.
Yeah. Now, what has been so far the worst piece of advice you received so far?
Being conventional.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so doing somebody else's version of what I should do. Yeah.
Or get a job.
Yeah. Get an ordinary,
job. 9 to 5, whatever. Yeah. Imagine that you were blessed with a time machine. You can go back in time and sit face to face with an 18-year-old Christine. What's the number one piece of advice you would give to her, knowing all that you know now?
I think it would just be trust the process and be open for the adventure and the magic of it, and know that, the world is actually a safe place. It's a safe place full of a lot of people who are willing to help you. And yeah.
Absolutely. Now, do you have your own podcast yet?
No, I don't. I should.
What's the number one reason that's holding you back?
Because I'm busy with some other writing projects. Yeah, that's just it. No.
Yeah. Now, imagine that today you have a very successful podcast, and today you're interviewing the most special person in the world, and that is yourself. What is the number one question that you want to ask yourself? What's the first question that comes to your mind?
Wow.
Don't think too much. The first thing that comes to your mind.
It's like, I know. who would I be in 10 years from now? And I'm like, I have no idea.
Uh, what do you want to be in 10 years?
Yeah, I would like to have a few more books written and maybe living somewhere different all over again.
So I noticed that so far you lived in currently in Wisconsin, Norway. You traveled to Russia. So is it fair to say that you're more attracted to colder climates than warmer ones?
That's kind of funny because when we moved back to the US, I wanted to move to Florida. My husband didn't want to.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And as you say, in 10 years from now, I'm kind of imagining somewhere tropical, but who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows?
That's a beautiful
Yeah,
part of life. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Adventure. Awesome. Now, the last question I want to ask you, and that's my favorite question I ask all my guests, and that is, what is the smallest thing that you've done that has had the greatest positive impact in both your life and business? For example, for me, it's been starting my podcast. What about you, Kristen?
It was saying yes to getting on a plane and taking, crystal healing back when I was 27.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't really know anything about this and I'm just going to do it. And it was intensive for 2 weeks. And that was like, oh my gosh, my whole nature of understanding of reality was ripped open because within 2 weeks I had done so many past life regressions, present life regressions,
Oh,
parallel universe, been on different planets. It was like, oh my gosh, been in Atlantis. So in 2 weeks, I'd seen all that and all this emotional purging from it. I was like, whoa. And the understanding and the healing and the excitement around that, I guess, took me through other journeys and other studies and other explorations.
did you do those on your own, or did you do that on some other people's?
Both. Yeah.
Wow.
So we had I think it was like 100 hours we clocked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, it was just, and we also did Kundalini yoga. So it was because the teacher was really big on, she was a Sikh, and she was really big on that. You have to develop your nervous system to tolerate all this energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really true. There was so much energy coming in that there were sometimes when we're doing the yoga that there was one time I was pulling in so much energy that I literally fell over and almost started vomiting from all the energy passing through.
Whoa.
And I just had to realize I had to slow it down. So it's, and this was such a huge contrast from, conventional way of being that, this whole world opening up and, being able to kind of midwife people through this process of bridging from, kind of ordinary looking at reality and how to get things done and fit in
Yeah.
to waking up to this other way of experiencing life. And not because, you can get distracted by the past life, but it's a portal into understanding who you are more on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Powerful. That could be another perfect topic for a podcast, because that's a topic that I'm very fascinated, captivated by, even anything to do with past lives and all that. I don't know if you remember one of the questions I asked you when you mentioned that last time when we had a chat. I asked you if you're a hypnotherapist, and you said no. But that's something that I'm very looking forward to do myself. Not just because I want to turn into a business, but because just for my own curiosity. I'm actually looking to get enrolled into one of those, what is it called? Hypnotherapy programs, whatever, to become a hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something captivating, especially when you mentioned past lives, future lives, parallel lives, going
Yeah,
all
I
the way
would
back.
say why I said it's like I don't have the title of hypnotherapist, but the way I work is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's different ways of bringing the brainwave into that frequency where you go into an altered state. And I just do a little bit different version of that.
Do you need to be physically in the same room as a person you're doing that, or you can do that
No,
online? Okay.
no.
Interesting. That's good. That's awesome.
No, I'd be happy to do a session with you sometime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can talk about that. Yes. So if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Well, Facebook is a great place to message me, there. Or, you can go into my website, look at things. It's just my name, ChristineEsdale.com.
Okay.
And I have a newsletter sign up there too. The website is in transition because I'm putting a lot of my classes online now. Simply, it's just more efficient, then everybody can do it at their own tempo. And because it's a better use of my time, I can build out the curriculum to be even more thorough. So that the Reiki classes are going to be even more personal development. Because when you get an increased vibration, suddenly your world around you starts changing so much.
Yeah.
And helping people walk through those kind of transitions with relationships and work and all that.
Beautiful. So send me after your website and any link you want me to post in the show notes, and I'll do that. Listen, Christine, absolute pleasure, blast talking to you. I salute you.
Yeah,
you're a true leader with a heart. Keep shining your light. Keep blessing the world with your presence, your impact, everything you're doing. Stay safe, stay awesome. God bless you, my friend. We're definitely going to be talking a lot. So talk to you soon. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Namaste there.
Take care.